was the last time you took a leap of faith, trusting that everything is going to work out? Do you crave growth, or are you merely content with the status quo? If you want more out of your life, out of your career, and out of your relationships, you are in the right place. Take the leap and discover how to create a life by design rather than living it by default. Real success starts with you. Now here's your host, Colleen Biggs.
All right, we are back. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Take the Leap. I am your host, Colleen Biggs. It is a rainy day here in Arizona, and I've got a sweater on because it's going to be like 65 or something. I love cold weather. I was just talking to Pam Wilson, my guest today. She loves tank tops and I love hoodies. And I don't know why that is because I live in Arizona, but I would love to know, like, what is your favorite go-to shirt that you love to wear? Because I'm getting ready to create some merchandise that's going to be all about motivation for women. And because obviously we know empowered women empower women. And I feel like an empowered woman, and I empower women. They say if you want to make a movement or have an impact, empower a woman. And I really believe that. And today we're going to talk about finding your voice. How do you find your voice? And our guest, Pam Wilson, is going to tell you maybe a little bit of a different way for you to find your voice that you're thinking, maybe not thinking of, because you might think it's in speaking. She's going to talk to you a little bit about how you could find your voice in writing. And I'm going to tell you how I met Pam Wilson years ago when I first became an entrepreneur, and how excited I am to interview her today. But before we get to that, we always want to start the show by thanking our sponsors for participating and supporting our show. And today I want to thank Phoenix Drone Pros, because at Phoenix Drone Pros, we love what we do and are passionate about each and every drone photography and video shoot. We've been in business since 2017. Our talent and skills shows in the video production we deliver. We offer fast service for commercial real estate, movies, events, and construction site monitoring. We also provide drone virtual tours that are all the rage right now. These virtual tours are great for team building and entertainment. Contact us today at phoenixdronepros.com to schedule your shoot online or to get more information. We capture everything. Thank you, Phoenix Drone Pros, for being our sponsor for today. Okay, back to the show. So finding your voice isn't necessarily about being heard everywhere. Finding your voice is something that Pam Wilson is going to take us through. And she's a writer, a licensed master social worker. I mean, can you imagine finding your voice in what she's doing as a social worker, creative writing facilitator, and book coach? And as a writing mentor, Pam empowers, loving it, Pam, empowers people to find and use their voice for storytelling and writing. She writes a personal narrative about life events, putting her unique spin and the journey of being human, the funny, frustrating, and inspiring. Pam also travels, writes, and interviews people for StoryCorps interviews. In fact, she's traveling right now. She's not even at her house. And she's been joining in on so many wonderful opportunities as she's been traveling. So Pam, welcome to the show.
Colleen, thank you so much for having me. I said this a couple of weeks ago that if I don't hear your voice every week and I'm not a part of a Zoom with you every week, that there's something missing. It's like sunshine for me. So I tune in. You were so funny. You're like, you just come no matter what the topic is on Thursday afternoons for Leap. And that is very true. I do not care what it is. As long as I can hear Colleen and see her beautiful smiling face, it makes me happy. So thank you for having me.
You know, I'm really glad you said that. How important is it for you? Let's just start the show off like this. How important is it, do you think, for someone to find their voice through support of others?
I think it's invaluable. Most entrepreneurs work on their own. Most writers work on their own unless you're working for a big publication. So I am alone in yoga clothes most every day. And to know that on Thursday afternoons, I'm going to be on a Zoom with 10 women, 5 women, 25 women. It is so important to network and let people know what you're thinking and what you're doing, and to hear what else is going on around the world. You can listen to the news, you can talk to your friends, you can see what's going on, but to know what's going on around the world with the people who appear on Leap, it's invaluable, especially to me. I always get a writing idea when I'm listening in. And it also makes me feel not so alone to know that I can always go on your Facebook page. I can always reach out and say, does anybody have somebody for this? Or does anybody have a resource? So for me, I am not kidding you. All of my Thursday afternoons are completely blocked out. And I will join you no matter what. And the support also that you receive, not only from you, but from everybody else. It's like being with your greatest girlfriends who know about you and who want to see you do the absolute best. And people get to know each other very quickly. So I am so glad that I actually found the Leap community, and I've been a member since I think like October and November.
Yeah, I think you're right. And
I'm going to be a lifer. So for some of your merchandise, you should write on Leap Lifer.
That's cute. I will add that for my merchandise, because I do want to create merchandise to keep women empowered. I think it's super important. And it not only empowers the woman wearing the merchandise, it also really empowers any other female that looks at the shirt. Like I had a cute shirt on that said, "Empowered women, empower women." And one of my daughters bought it for me. And I can't tell you how many high fives, women talking to me the day that I wore it out in public. So I think it's really important for us to remember that. All right. Let's get back to finding your voice. There's a lot of ways that we can find our voice. And we're not talking about vocal cords voice, like, learning how to speak for the first time when you're a child. We're talking about finding your voice, like your authenticity of who you are. And I think a lot of that has to do with accepting who you are. Pam, do you find you do a lot of, you talked about StoryCorps interviews. I would love for you to touch on that, because you've started doing these interviews. You do workshops. There's so much that you do, but take us back to, like, I'm not a writer. I do like to write in books and things like that. And it's how we met like 5 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. Yeah.
6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. We met about 5 years ago or whatever. So, and it was because I was in a book and you were one of the editors, and I just thought you were fabulous. Why writing? Because I wouldn't want to sit down and write all day and that be what I do. That doesn't light me up, right? So that's not my voice, I think. I do have a voice in writing, but not like that. Talk to us through it.
So it's interesting that you talk about finding your voice. I had been a writer probably since I held a crayon. I was always storytelling, always telling stories verbally and in writing. And I always knew that I was going to be a writer, always. I went to a state school, and today's version of the state school, you get direct admit to the journalism school. Back then you had to apply for it. And I did not get into the journalism school, but that did not stop me from writing. Then I got a different degree, and I began working as a social worker after I got a graduate degree, but I was always writing. And my uncle, who's only 18 years older than I was, said to me, "You have to find your voice." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I have a voice." He's like, "Not yet. You'll know." And so I began writing stories about what I saw. My dream in college in the 80s was to move to New York or Chicago and write in magazines. This is way before Carrie Bradshaw. That was my idea. That's what I was going to do. And I also wanted to work on Sesame Street. So I wanted to do those two things. And so I had kids, they were 3 and 5, and I'd always been writing, and I got injured. And somebody said, "What have you always wanted to do?" So I sat down and started writing about parenting. And a family magazine in St. Louis, where I live, picked it up. And I had a monthly column called SOS from Suburbia. And I literally wrote about parenting and my kids from my perspective, always from my viewpoint. I was the Lucy in every single story. I was the one learning. I was the one tripping over things. My kids were written about for 14 years. They didn't even know what it was like not to have their mom's life and their life out into the world. And people would come up to them, and I used a different last name. I always use my own last name. So unless you knew us, you didn't know that we were related. But as soon as somebody realized who their mom was, they would say, "Oh, I read what your mom wrote." So that propelled me, giving me enough confidence and empowering me to then reach out to magazines and newspapers and online sites and saying, "I'm a writer. And because once you're published, you're a writer in my head. And so I began writing for other family magazines and online. And probably about 7 or 8 years ago, somebody approached me about being a writing coach. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I've been editing my kids' papers for years. I have a very good eye for what sounds okay in terms of being an editor. And so I also, when I do that, I know how to keep people's voice. So if you read any of the anthologies that I was an editor of, there were 20 different voices. I still do that today. I can still keep someone's voice. So my voice was really important to me because I always wanted to tell stories, and I wanted to tell stories that made sense and that made people smile. There's a lot of humor in my writing, but I don't know that you would call it funny writing, although I do honestly think I could be a writer in SNL because sometimes I have the greatest ideas. And so finding my voice and using it as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as a mom, as a parent, as a partner, as a girlfriend, as a sister, that has been a remarkable journey for me. And I write about literally things that are happening in my world. And people don't seem to mind that everything is copy, like Nora Ephron says. And then I also started, since I love to travel, I started writing about travel in the same way with a personal narrative. And it's not just like, hey, go to Boston and do this. It's more, this is how I got here, and this is why I'm here, and this is what I'm choosing to do. And why don't you try this? And people have responded to the travel blogs as well. So that's been really exciting. I think that I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I'm not sure that women were really empowered to use their voices in the same way. There were definitely women who did that, but not where I came from. Yeah. I came from a family with very young parents. And so I had to find my voice. My dad was one of my biggest advocates about writing. And I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And to this day, so there's probably not a day that goes by that I don't write. I understand that other people, that's not their strength. And so oftentimes I was a ghostwriter on New York Times bestselling book, and she didn't want to write either. So what we did was she talked to me and I wrote it. So I can do that too. I can retain your voice by you telling me the story. Yeah. I'm also, as you mentioned, I've always loved StoryCorps. It's a nonprofit organization. And if anybody has ever seen the booth set up in different cities, you would go in and they would record your story. You would go in with your grandmother and you would say, could you tell me the story about how you met Grandpa? And it's recorded as is. It's the actual human experience. Well, last summer, a friend showed me that they had an app. I had read all the StoryCorps books. I had hoped that it would happen in St. Louis. And basically, it's the real human experience. So there's no editing on the app. You hear all the ums and ahs, and I don't know, doors opening, people laughing, and people are really enjoying listening to 12 to 15 minute StoryCorps interviews about real live people. I've interviewed, I always joke and say I interview the Muppets in my neighborhood because I like you go to the bank and you make friends with the banker, but she's got a great story. Mm. You know, you're in yoga and the yoga teacher has this amazing journey. And so, in fact, last week I'm doing a whole series on friendship, girlfriends. And I interviewed somebody I have known, we figured out 20 years. And we talked about the history of our friendship, the legacy of friendship. Yeah. And what it means to women to be supported in that role as well. And we always have a lot of fun. There's always a lot of laughing on these StoryCorps interviews because you go somewhere you don't think you're going to go. And that's what you do when you're listening to stories. Yeah. And so that's basically, that brings me such joy and such happiness. And you know this, Colleen, because we've had many conversations about this since January. We started a business last year, a writing company, and things didn't happen exactly as I thought they would. And so I had to rethink some things. It was part of the journey. And I will always be a writer. People ask me that all the time. They said, well, when do you think you'll stop writing? I started this world writing. I'm going to go out of this world writing. I will continue to write regardless of what I do with it. I talk to a lot of people who don't want anybody to read their writing, and I think that's fine as well. I've also facilitated writing groups in social service agencies and schools and businesses. And a lot of people don't want their writing into the world, which I completely understand. I have no shame, and I always want people to read everything I write. But here's the thing too. I worked with an amazing editor, and she recently said to me, you're the best kind of writer because you allow editors to make your writing better and sparkle. So I am always about, I am not married to any of my words. If somebody comes in and says, I can make this better, I'm going to definitely work with that person. So that's how I edit as well. So I will continue writing forevermore.
I think listening to you, some of our listeners might notice that you, since you started your business, were finding your voice as an entrepreneur. And I took me a little while, even though I had worked with entrepreneurs and launched hundreds of businesses. You would think, oh, you just start your own business and you know exactly what to do. I was finding my place, my voice as an entrepreneur. And we were talking about this before we went live. One of the biggest freedoms when you do find your voice is you have joy and happiness in what you do because you choose it every day. Like, I love what I do. And my husband asked me this morning, what does your day look like? And I said, I have the best day ever. I say that almost every day, but I get to interview podcast guests this morning. I get to do my own podcast. I get to go to lunch with a dear friend that had invited me to be a keynote speaker, and we stay in contact. I get to run a book club. I get to coach a client. Like, that is the best day ever. And so I could face my day, Pam, with this frustration, or I can face my day with joy and happiness and gratitude to be so thankful that I have a podcast, that I've even created this out of nothing. It didn't even exist 6 years ago, and I really believe that we need to push forward and do what lights us up. What do we love? Simplify things, right? Do the things you love. And that's truly finding your voice. What do people call it, Pam? Finding your lane, finding your, right. Staying in your lane, doing what your purpose is. I'll tell you this, when you and I had that conversation on the phone, to me, the best advice we can always offer another person is like, look deep inside and what do you feel? Like, what do you feel like you want to do? If you're feeling overworked or you're feeling strung out or, pulled here or there. And I'm sure these interviews that you do on StoryCorps have got to be amazing because we all have this journey individually that has molded us into the person that we are today. Right, Pam? And you have the same story. And being an entrepreneur, that's tough stuff. So as you've been finding your own voice as an entrepreneur now, what have you learned about yourself?
That's a great question. And you and I have talked about this at length. I really and truly thought that I was going to hang my shingle out. That's what social workers say. We hang our shingle out. And I was going to have lots and lots of people who wanted to write a book, and I was going to coach them. And I was going to write and people were going to love it. And what I did learn was that even though I can do something and I can do it well, doesn't mean I need to do it. And I also found out that writing for other people, especially website and tech kinds of things, I can do it. And I love to research and learn new things. That was not bringing me a lot of joy. What was bringing me a lot of joy every single day that found a way into my heart and was my heart was writing, was telling my story and really and truly writing. And it's interesting because you can read all of the experts who say, you need to write 1,000 words a day. You need to do this. That doesn't work for me. What works for me is when I have an idea, it doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing. I literally sit down and start writing. I could be coming home from a hot yoga class. I could be on my way somewhere and I'm like, hang on, I have to sit here and I have to write. And that's exactly what was bringing me so much joy. I had to figure out though, I love being an entrepreneur just for all of those reasons that you say. And I have had 9-to-5 jobs or 10-to-10 jobs. I mean, I've had that. Find the most joy in writing at 7:30 in the morning or at 6 o'clock at night, and then getting it out into the world. What I also found as an entrepreneur is I needed another skill set to promote my writing and to be a writer in the world. And what I ended up doing was I ended up becoming a whole brain certified practitioner through Herman Global. And basically what that means is I am now certified to facilitate executive leadership workshops, communication, innovation, change, leadership. And what I've decided to do is integrate writing into every single workshop that I present. I am a very good facilitator because I'm a very good storyteller. I always have been. I take workshops all the time about being a storyteller, and I learn so much about it, just like you learn about being an entrepreneur. Having a skill set that is marketable out into the world makes it easier for me to spend the time writing. But here's what I've also decided, because you know how we all talk about manifesting things. I'm going to continue to write and put it out into the world because I love telling stories. And I believe, just like the clothes from the Gap, you're going to find this in landfills in 400 years. I also believe that my story is going to be found by somebody like Reese Witherspoon or Drew Barrymore. Hi, Reese. Hi, Drew. And they're going to say, this is a good movie. This is a good Netflix series. I really believe that. And it sounds as when I first started saying that, people looked at me and like sort of gave me a funny look. I don't believe, I actually believe this is going to happen because I am certain this story is an every woman's story. It is about women in midlife who have been through, who've raised kids, who haven't raised kids, who've had jobs, who have girlfriends, who are being entrepreneurs. I believe my story is going to be told in a different avenue at some point. Not my goal, not my main goal. I just know that I have to continue putting my voice and my stories out into the world. And that's what I do. And honestly, sometimes like I giggle when I write something and I'll think, oh, Reese Witherspoon's going to love this. And I have this other set of marketable skills, being an entrepreneur. And so going back to it, I love being an entrepreneur. And I'm so proud that I tell people I own my own business. It's hard. There's so many rewards like you and I talked about. It is something that I think was waiting for me on my journey, and I had to get there. And once I was on this journey, it actually became where I was supposed to be.
I believe that the path doesn't always show itself until we're ready. And yet people want to force the path, right? You think this is what I got to do and this is where I got to go. And then you burn yourself out and you're like, I'm not happy. And most entrepreneurs go from a job to creating now a new job for themselves as an entrepreneur. And I don't have a job. Like I do the things I love. My LEAP community is about bonding and bringing around women that support each other and help each other build businesses and offer each other advice. It's how you hang out, at happy hour with a bunch of friends and colleagues and things like that. It's also, my mastermind is about when I used to go away with my girlfriends to Mexico and I didn't have to be a mom or a wife when I was raising young kids. And we would talk about everything in our lives and help each other and mastermind ideas and role play if you were breaking up with a boyfriend or whatever it was. I mean, we like that was growth for me, but we don't ever take the time or spend the time to even work on creating our story, right? And I mean daily in our actions, not even writing, but creating our stories because we are so inundated with so much busyness of things that are going on that you're not really enjoying life. And, I've done a lot of crazy things in my life. Everyone knows that, from saying yes to half marathons, in 24 hours. And that was a journey I enjoyed versus, training for something and, only having goals and setting the next goal and then going, never really celebrating. And I love that you yourself, Pam, you not only celebrate other people's stories and other people's lives and other people's voices, but you've been finding your own voice through this journey. It's beautiful. It's like I found and discovered and lit my empowerment through my entrepreneur journey, like you've been finding your voice. So I know someone out there right now is like, StoryCourse, I've never heard of that. What are you talking about? Where you go into a booth? How do you do those interviews? I would love a raw story. Like, I don't even know if I have a story, but maybe Pam will find it for me. Maybe someone wants to be interviewed. How should someone connect with you? Is LinkedIn the best? Should they go to LinkedIn?
Okay. Absolutely. LinkedIn, Facebook, both a personal and business page. And I also have a website. Okay. And you can contact me through the website. You also brought up something else I was thinking about. And we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, is that if you have joy and happiness in each day and you're grateful for it, you have gratitude for that. For me, that makes every single day. That makes my every single day, my every single day. So as a writer and as a storyteller, to celebrate not only my own voice, but other people's, I love that. I'm going to actually steal that, please. I'm going to steal that whole celebrate. For my whole first year of being an entrepreneur, I would not go out to lunch with anybody. I wouldn't do anything. And that has eased up a lot, because if it's a gorgeous day and I am writing and I'm doing something and I have the time, I'm not on deadline, I will go take a hike or a walk. And I'm done not being happy. I am going to live in each and every single day. And I am going to have some part of happy and joy in every single part of my day. And that mindset, what you're talking about, that changes your view. I am so incredibly proud when people ask me what I do. And I learned something in a book. It said, don't ask people what they do. Ask people what they like to do when you're at a party or you meet somebody, because that gives you so much more insight. And what I like to do is I like to tell stories, and I am always listening. And so for me, I think I had to go through that year of challenge being an entrepreneur, because this year's already feels different. I feel like a completely different person, lots of different reasons why, but I feel like a completely different person and entrepreneur. And I am so much happier in this space than I was anytime last year. I'm very proud that I did that. And the other thing about being an entrepreneur is one thing leads you to 400 other things. It's like kind of being a writer too, where you go in every single direction. But I can already feel the change in myself. And I think for personally and as a writer, to feel that change, it makes a complete difference in all of my work, all of my fun, all of my play, all of my relationships. And I feel like I'm in this day.
I love that. You can find Pam on Facebook at Wilson Writing. You can find her online at wilsonmentoringwriting.com, and go find her, Pam Wilson, on LinkedIn. You can't miss her. I mean, your hair's kind of reddish brown.
Today it is
very reddish brown. Yeah. So
it's usually not.
She has reddish brown long hair. Come over to my Facebook page, Colleen Biggs. I'm the one doing the karate chop in my profile photo, and you can find her there. You know, there was something that was written in front of me here that came from Pam, and it says she loves to say yes to most things and then figures out how to make it happen. That talks to me in a way that you have this love for life. She loves to bike, read, travel, dance, and hike, and practice yoga. One day she hopes to live on or near a beach. And where are you today?
Actually, I'm visiting friends in Cape Cod, which literally the beach is 2 miles away, and we can hear the ocean.
Yeah, I love that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Finding your voice is not about speaking up. It is really about finding what lights you up and then telling your story and making sure that doesn't go to the grave with you, because there are so many individuals in your life that are out there that need that to motivate them. How many books have you read? How many blogs have you read? How many little excerpts, quotes, whatever it was, writing on a saying on a shirt, has it impacted you and changed your life? If we stay silent and we never speak up or write about that story, then we're really, being selfish and kind of keeping that to ourselves. And because we're the only you that's ever been, you're the only you that will ever be, Pam. This is our only chance to find our voice and truly make sure it's heard. And I know that she would be there to do an interview with you on StoryCorps. So make sure you reach out to her, Pam Wilson, on LinkedIn, or go to wilsonmentoringwriting.com. Thanks, Pam, for being a guest today on today's show. I absolutely enjoyed interviewing you. And I know that someone out there today is pondering if they've found their voice yet. So
thank you, Colleen.
Thank you for
Again,
encouraging
seeing your
me
happy face makes my week.
to do so. Great. And have an awesome time on the Cape. That is so awesome that you're out there next to the water. I know that lights you up. And to all of you, think about, what does it mean for you to find your voice? And until next time, don't forget, be you and be strong. Until then, bye-bye for now.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery, where you learned the tools to create a life by design. Remember, you are the only you there is, and you are the only you that will ever be. Be you and be strong, because you are brilliant, and the world needs you at your best. We cannot wait for you to join us again next time.